This month I am sharing how to make fabric flowers in 3 different styles, and we will talk a little bit about upcycling fabric, so let's go ahead and dive into this video. Hello everybody, welcome to Crafty Soup. My name is Misty, where I create with paper and photos in artful ways. Alright, for this first one, I'm going to start off a little bit easier, and that is just using dye products. You can cut fabric with regular paper cutting dies. Now, there's a little bit of tips and tricks here that can help it be more successful through your die cut machine, but we're going to go ahead and get started, and I will share those tips with you. This is just felt from the craft store. This is nothing special. I do hear that wool felt will cut better than this synthetic felt, but I haven't tried it, so I don't know for sure. I keep a cheat sheet with my die cutting machine that tells me what sandwich to use. So once you figure out what sandwich is going to work in your machine, then you should make a note of that and keep it somewhere. So I did my first pass through of this die and it worked okay. My cheat sheet can't account for the different types of felt or fabric that are out there. So the best tip I have, if you're not getting a super clean cut with what should be a good sandwich for your machine, go ahead and put a piece of cardstock underneath the cutting surface of your felt, and that will help the die just press a little bit farther through and give you cleaner cuts. And I was very satisfied with how that worked out. So I'm going to go ahead and cut a whole bunch of these yellow sunflowers. This is a die set from Lawn Fawn that was an exclusive to an event product, but I will put a link in the description box down below for another very similar set. I think it's slightly bigger, but if you're looking for something along these lines, you can use my shopping links, and I greatly appreciate the support when you do choose to shop there. Okay, you can see that I have die cut different colors of felt, and off camera I die cut a few green leaves as well. And now I'm going to build up these flowers. What I'm doing here is using circles of punched cardstock. And I'm doing that for a couple of different reasons. One, it helps separate the layers of felt to give a little bit more depth. Two, it provides a whole lot of stability when gluing felt together because it does not hold glue well. It will dry eventually, but it does soak it up a lot and it becomes a squishy mess and it doesn't stick right away. So the cardstock kind of helps solve that a little bit. And then the third reason is that this top layer of this die in particular has some little holes in it to see through to the next layer. And I want that next layer to be a little bit darker. And I didn't have a dark brown piece of felt, so I just did that with paper. And what you're mostly going to see is the darkness. You won't really see that it's paper under there. So these flowers end up looking completely like felt flowers. All right, so that is project number 1. For project number 2, I am going to upcycle some fabric. And I like to do this whenever possible. You can see this pair of pants had a terrible accident and they are no longer wearable. So I hang on to this kind of thing for doing projects like this. And I just want to take a pause here for a second because I want to tell you that most fabrics will work. Old t-shirts are fantastic for this because they don't ravel, although they tend to roll up on themselves. Woven fabrics like denim and other cottons can fray at the edges if they're handled too much. Inside something like a scrapbook page, that shouldn't be an issue, but on a card, it might be. You can just dab little bits of glue around the edges, the cut edges, and that should help hold the fibers together. So those are just a couple of quick tips that I wanted to be sure to get in here. And it's a great way to use this fabric instead of just throwing it in the trash. All right, I've cut off a good piece of that fabric. Now you can die cut this fabric as well as felt. This is a thinner fabric, so it won't need as many layers in your sandwich. But again, I will recommend adding a cardstock underneath that fabric as you cut it because that gives the die extra room to squish down, and that's going to be more likely for it to squish and cut down through the fabric. And you can see when it comes out, it did indeed cut through fine. Now, if it doesn't cut through fine on the first time, go ahead and run it back through the machine 1 or 2 more times, and that can often cut any stray little strands of fibers that were missed the first time around. All right, you could also trace your die and cut it out by hand with scissors, or do like I'm doing here and just freeform cut a circle. You'll see in the end that it doesn't matter too much. When I am freeform cutting a circle, I just like to cut off a rectangle or a square and then just kind of dangle it and trim the corners. It's not a perfect circle, but that's okay. These are very kind of rough and rustic projects anyway, and it all works out in the end. So then I proceed to spiral cut my circle, and that's when Willow decides to hop off my lap and join the video for her first time. We have 2 5-month-old kittens, and Willow just got spayed, and so she's been hanging out with me a lot as she recovers. And I didn't think she had the energy to play, but sure enough, she decided to get up there and get into the video. You'll be seeing more of her and the other cats, I'm sure, in future videos. All right, the important thing about this spiral is that I do leave a good chunk of a circle in the middle to help glue everything together. I will give you a few more tips on cutting that circle a little bit later, but first I wanted to talk about rolling these, and that's what we're going to do. I like to use a pair of reverse tweezers that hold themselves closed so I don't have to do that. But then here's where things didn't quite go to plan. So 2 things happened here. One is that I haven't done this technique in quite a while. And 2, I was doing it in a way that you do for paper, which is definitely more springy than fabric is. And so when I rolled this up, I rolled it way too tightly. And you can see the final product here was a bit of a fail. And there you go. That's my lovely flower. Let me show you how to do it the correct way. A better way to deal with this, and I know you can't see it very, very well right now, but I will do this again. But I hold my tweezers straight up and down, kind of like putting a fork into spaghetti and twirling it. And as I twirl it, I am going to have to unwind the spiral to keep it level and straight. But doing it this way is going to naturally keep the bottom edges aligned at the table, and you want that to be the case so that when you glue everything down to that inner circle, everything will have a flatness to it and touch the glue and hold together. And there we've got that beautiful spiral flower. Now I'm working on another one, and here's where a couple of other tips come in. When you cut your spirals into thinner wedges, you will get shorter flowers. If you cut your flowers out of wider, bigger circles, you will get wider, bigger flowers. If you cut your spirals where you start them off thin and then gradually thicken them up towards the middle, you will get a flower that has that natural height gradation that you're going to see in a flower in nature. And so that is what I did here. While this one ends up being kind of big, I wanted you to be able to see the details there. So I got that glued in place, but the inner petals are smaller and deeper set than the outer petals. And here I'm kind of explaining that concept to you with the wideness and thickness. All right, so those are the spiral flowers. Here's a little bit of an easier technique, and this is just ruffled flowers. And again, there's a couple of different ways to go about this. I like to finish those up with a button because they don't have as lovely as a center as the spiral flowers do. So you can just cut strips of fabric. And again, here I'm cutting that gradient strip for the same reasons. But you can just cut however many strips you want, and then you can use any glue for this one. Hot glue definitely will adhere faster, but you run the risk of getting your fingers more, because what you have to do is kind of pleat this and pinch it down as you go around that bottom section of this spiral. Now you can do this on a separate circle, on a cardstock circle. There's lots of ways to accomplish this pinch, twist, and spiral down. And the longer strip of fabric you use, the bigger your flowers will be. What's nice about this method is the flowers are relatively flat. And here you can see I flatten it down, and then I'm going to put a block on top of it to help wait for that glue to dry. And these ones are much flatter than the spiral ones. So if you're putting them in, say, a scrapbook page, you'll have more luck with those. All right, I hope you got some interesting ideas out of this, whether it be die cutting fabric or creating flowers in different styles. If you have any questions, feel free to drop me a note. Hopefully I didn't forget anything in this video. which does happen more often than I would like. At any rate, that's it for this time, and until next time, I hope you have an artful day.